Hi everyone, this is Ginger and you're watching Gnostic Psych, the channel where I share with you the arcane and interesting related to psychology. If you like this video or any of my other videos, please click like and subscribe. And if you're ever interested in checking out my references, click on the downward arrow below the screen to the right. Well, today I'm going to be talking about one of the early female leading lights of psychology, the psychoanalyst Karen Horney, and her concept of the tyranny of should. Are you constantly focused on what you should say, think, do based on what society and others think and feel versus what you actually want to say, think, do, and feel? Do you frequently try to measure up to an impossible, idealized standard of what you think you should be in a variety of everyday situations, whether as a parent, employee, professional, or partner? Do you find yourself overly critical after making mistakes in various situations? If you do, you may be under the psychological rule of the tyranny of should. But before I get to that, some background on Karen Horney. Karen Horney was born in 1888 in Hamburg, Germany. She graduated from the University of Berlin with a medical degree in 1913 and was first introduced to psychoanalysis after being treated for her depression by Carl Abraham and Hans Sachs, both of whom were students of Sigmund Freud. Horney was a lifetime sufferer of depression. Horney subsequently became a member of Freud's circle and trained to become a psychoanalyst herself. As a psychoanalyst, she would actually play a major role in the founding of the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institution, and Horney helped design the institution's programs, taught classes, conducted research, and saw patients. However, she disagreed with Freud's theory about women experiencing penis envy, and his argument that the psyches of men and women were somehow different. She argued that any perceived differences between the sexes were based on social and cultural norms at the time regarding gender roles. Horney moved from Germany to the U.S. in 1932 after being invited to help psychoanalyst and early pioneer of psychosomatics Franz Alexander run the Chicago Institute of Psychoanalysis. She subsequently taught and trained students at the New School for Social Research and the New York Psychoanalytic Institute after moving to Brooklyn, New York. Horney later became the dean of the American Institute of Psychoanalysis before abandoning orthodox psychoanalytic principles altogether and developed her own approach. In 1941, she founded the Association for the Advancement of Psychoanalysis, a school for teaching and training new therapists based on her theories of work with the approach. Horney then taught at the New York Medical College until her death in 1952. Karen Horney's work and legacy influenced feminist psychologists as well as those specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy and rational emotive behavioral therapy. She's considered to be one of a group of disenchanted psychoanalysts who broke away from Freud's ideas about biological drives and instincts, and they were called the Neo-Freudians. The overall direction of Neo-Freudians' research work was the impact of external factors on the psyche. For example, interpersonal relationships, attachment styles, socialization, culture, sexuality, and class differences. Some other influential Neo-Freudians were Alfred Adler, Harry Stack Sullivan, Melanie Klein, Clara Thompson, Erich Fromm, and Erik Erikson. The Neo-Freudians would have an influence on object relation theorists like Ronald Fairbairn, attachment theorists like Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby, and more recently heterodox psychodynamic intellectuals like Jacques Lacan and Slavoj Žižek. The main focus of Karen's work was the study of neurosis. In her 1950 book, Neurosis and Human Growth, The Struggle Towards Self-Realization, she described the tyranny of should. The tyranny of should could be described as the constant inner dictates that people continuously have in their minds about how they should think, act, react, feel, or know in any given situation. More recently, it's been referred to as masturbation. Though we all can succumb to tyrannical should thinking from time to time, and there are things we ultimately have to do, like paying taxes and die, tyrannical should thoughts have been observed as a continuous struggle for those who experience neuroses, in particular those who have anxiety disorders or depression. The psychology of the person whose thoughts are dominated by tyrannical should thinking is to measure their actions and reactions, thoughts and feelings based on impossibly high standards in almost every situation they're in. If the person doesn't measure up to any of these idealized, near-perfect standards, they further disparage themselves as being inadequate, damaged, inferior, or even worthless. Some common buzzwords that we can find out in everyday vernacular of those under the should tyranny are should, ought, and must. However, this list is not exhaustive. Horney gave everyday examples when she wrote, "He should be the utmost of honesty, generosity, considerateness, justice, dignity, courage, unselfishness. He should be the perfect lover, husband, and teacher. He should be able to endure everything, should like everybody, should love his parents, his wife, his country." Her list goes on, but I think you get the idea. We can all identify with some of her examples of tyrannical should thinking occasionally in our lives. Horney identified the cause of tyrannical should thinking as attributed to early childhood adversities like authoritarian parenting from an adult attachment figure or figures, and the criticism from peers of the same age. Though the person affected by constant tyrannical should thinking may eventually disregard the criticism or judgments of the specific early attachment figures or peers, the person's sense of self-worth may still be distorted by the messages, which the person may not be consciously aware. In effect, the messages can affect future relationship interactions by causing the person to experience similar reactions to real and perceived criticisms and later self-hatred. She further wrote, "A person is never aware either of the full impact of the inner tyranny or of its nature, but there are great individual differences in the attitudes toward this tyranny and the ways of experiencing it. They range between the opposite poles of compliance and rebellion. While elements of such different attitudes operate in each individual, usually one or the other prevails." Horney described the element of 3 personality types who grapple with their tyrannical should thinking. The first, the expansive type, identifies with its tyrannical should thinking to the point of embracing all of them without any personal reflection. The expansive type views not adhering to should thinking as a failure. They therefore refuse to deviate or slip from conforming to near impossible standards. And when the expansive type is not self-enforcing their countless shoulds, oughts, and musts, they are enforcing them on others around them. The second, the self-effacing type, also thinks that their inner dictates are perfectly valid. However, unlike the other types, they experience distress from adhering to them. They are prone to fail while trying to measure up to the idealized standards of the inner should tyranny, and when they fail to meet the idealized standards, they subject themselves to further self-loathing. The third, resigned type, will resist should thinking, either passively or actively. Passive resistance is when anything interpreted as commands is rebelled against by not trying at all. By not trying at all, to do what they are told, the person doesn't have to face the possibility of failing to measure up to their inner should standards. Active resistance is like the passive type. It's also an avoidance of facing possible failure to impossible standards. Anything interpreted as commands, demands, or other kind of coercion is rebelled against actively, which in the extreme sense can lead to criminal behavior. So how can you change or challenge your should thinking? One way is to ask yourself, how would you react to a friend engaging in self-criticism or self-hatred over the same thing you said, thought, felt, or did? As a friend, you would likely think that they're being too hard on themselves. You would likely tell them that it was understandable why they said, thought, felt, or did under the circumstances. There are exceptions to this, of course, like murder, rape, abuse, and theft. But I digress. You wouldn't beat your friend up, so ask yourself why you're beating yourself up over the same thing. Another way is to challenge your inner dialogue of how you handle a particular situation. Use words related to absolutes while judging your actions and reactions. For example, before I do these videos, because I'm not the best with technology or editing, I usually do these recordings in one fell swoop, which can tend to put pressure on me to not stumble on my words, which I do from time to time. If I were to engage in should thinking, I would probably be telling myself, if I flubbed, I should have been flawless with my delivery of speech. What's wrong with me? However, it'd be better if I told myself, it would have been better if I didn't stumble during my speech, but everybody does it from time to time. And there's also such a thing as called editing, which I haven't learned how to do yet. So overall, the speech goes well in my videos, and I tend to get likes for them. So if it's not perfect, I can only try to do better next time. So stop shooting all over yourself and start living in the gray area of thinking. Thank you.